Hello students, today we are going to continue with chapter 13 of science, motion and time. And today we are going to learn about two more types of motion, that is non-uniform motion and uniform motion. If the speed of an object moving along a straight line keeps changing, its motion is said to be non-uniform motion. On the other hand, an object moving along a straight line with a constant speed is said to be in uniform motion. Now let us study about measurement of time. If you did not have a clock, how would you decide what time of the day it is? Have you ever wondered how our elders could tell the approximate time of the day by just looking at the shadows? How do we measure time intervals of a month, a year? You'll get answers to all above questions later in this lecture. Our ancestors noticed that many events in the nature repeat themselves after a definite interval of time. For example, they found that the sun rises every day in the morning. The time between one sunrise and the next was called a day. Similarly, a month was measured from one new moon to the next. A year was fixed as the time taken by the earth to complete one revolution of the sun. Often we need to measure intervals of time which are much shorter than a day. Clocks or watches are perhaps the most common time measuring devices. Have you ever wondered how clocks and watches measure time? The working of clocks is rather complex, but all of them make use of some periodic motion. One of the most well-known periodic motions is that of a simple pendulum. Do you know what a simple pendulum is? Consider an object of small mass suspended from a fixed end by the means of a thread, wire or a string. This setup is called a pendulum. The object attached to one end of a thread is called the bob of the pendulum. Initially, the pendulum is at rest. The position of the bob is what we called the rest position or the mean position. Now, what will happen if I give this bob little push on either of the directions? You will see that it starts moving back and forth. This back and forth motion is repetitive in nature, and hence this motion of the bob is also called the oscillatory motion or the cyclic motion. So when does it complete one cycle or oscillation? We say that the bob has covered one cycle or one oscillation when it moves from the mean to one extreme point, then to the other extreme and back to the mean. Let me repeat. From the mean to the extreme to the opposite extreme and then back to the mean is one oscillation. However, under ideal conditions, the motion will simply repeat itself forever in equal intervals of time. Such a type of motion is called periodic motion. It means if a bob takes 3 seconds to complete the first oscillation, then it will take 3 seconds to complete the second, the third, the 10th or the 50th oscillation as well. This property of simple pendulum makes it the best timekeepers. This property was first observed by Galileo in 17th century. Christian Huygens used this property to invent pendulum clock. Pendulum clocks were very popular from 17th century till 19th century. Later, it was replaced by electric clocks with one or more cells. These clocks are called quartz clocks. How was the time measured in ancient time? In the beginning, man used the sundials to determine time. The sundial consists of a stick with a circular dial consists of marking on it. With the changing position of the sun in the sky, the length of the shadow falling on the dial also changed. The length of shadow is divided into 12 hours. Even today, sundials are often seen in gardens and parks. Just one drawback of these clocks were they were not able to tell time at night and cloudy weather. After the sun clocks, water clocks were developed. In this type of clock, a fine hole was made in the bottom of a pot, and the pot was floated on a vessel full of water. Water used to enter this floating pot to the hole in a fixed time. The pot would sink in the water. This clock would help in finding time during the day and the night. Later on, sand clocks were developed. Sand clocks consisted of pot with a hole in the bottom and filled with sand. Another pot was put under the sand-filled pot. The sand filling in the lower pot would give indication of time. These clocks could not become very popular. Next topic we are going to study today is units of time and speed. The basic unit of time is a second. Its symbol is S. Larger units of time are minutes and hours. Now tell me, what would be basic unit of speed? Since the speed is distance over time, the basic unit of speed is meter per second. Of course, it could also be expressed in other units such as meter per minute or kilometer per hour. You must remember that the symbols of all units are written in singular. For example, 50 kilometer and not 50 kilometers, or 8 centimeter and not 8 centimeters. That's all for today. Bye bye kids.